Morning, everybody. Good afternoon from our friends from Eastern Canada and other parts that are not in BC. Welcome to our fourth Sage Mining User Group. My name is Paul Caron. I'm the CEO, and today I have the pleasure of introducing Alan Whitehouse, who's a Chief Software Architect with True Sky. As you know, during these user group meetings, we're trying to bring to you some subjects that are of interest to Sage users, particularly Sage 300. And in today's session, we're lucky that we can actually have a product that works with Sage 300 and also with Sage's enterprise software, which is Sage X3, which is a product that we're working very hard on and developing our mining solutions around as well. So this product covers a wide range of products. So just a quick introduction today, and then we're going to get Alan to give an overview of True Sky. And of course, we're always open to questions. This session is being recorded, so we'll be able to send it out to you after if you want to look at it in more detail. And if you have other questions, we will have contact information. So who's Caron? We've been in this business for quite a long time, over 22 years in business. We have a really excellent team, highly trained in the software, also good accounting knowledge, good knowledge of business processes. And we have clients worldwide, in Canada, the US, Africa, in Latin America. We have an office in Lima, Peru to support mining companies that might be operating in South America. And our business is really focused on mining. It has been for many years, but lately in the last few years, 100% focus on mining with Sage 300. We understand the mining industry, and my background right from birth actually is in the mining industry, and we really do understand the value of the mining industry in the world, particularly when we start talking about green energy and electric cars and all of those things that we're moving towards. The need for products that are mined increases. So we're very proud to be supporting the mining industry. We are supported very strongly by Sage Canada. We have a great relationship with them, but also we work with other Sage offices in the world, South America, Europe, all over the map, because as we move into our enterprise software, we really do need support from all of Sage, because we're looking at multi-country implementations most of the time. So our approach to mining is, we really want to build a team that has the knowledge of the industry and the knowledge of the software and the knowledge of the processes that our clients go through when they're running their business. We look at software and our services that are tailored to the mining industry. So we focus our processes that way. We focus our IP, and we focus the products that we bring to show you in these user groups on mining industry. And we also have support not only for the head offices, which are typically in Canada for our mining clients, but also where they operate, which might be Peru, which might be other countries that we work with. Okay, so that's about Caron, and I think at this point I will turn it over to Alan. So over to you, Alan.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to go through some slides here really quick just to kind of give you a level set and a background about who we are, what our application does, and so forth. And then I'm going to show some of the actual software to give you a flavor of some of the things that we can do. We will be handling questions at the end, just to reiterate. So hang on any questions that you have, and then you can submit them at the end, and we will be more than happy to answer them at that point. So why would you look at a budgeting and forecasting solution in the first place, and why would you look at something like True Sky? Well, really, one of the goals of True Sky is to allow you to focus your time on strategy and analysis, rather than having to waste a whole lot of time on that drudgery that traditionally goes along with the budgeting and forecasting process. So again, we want you to focus on the high value stuff and have all of that stuff that just drives you crazy be taken care of for you automatically. And within that kind of framework, True Sky really helps three different kinds of user groups within your organization: contributors, the finance group, and decision makers. And I'll talk a little bit about each of those. When it comes to contributors, contributors by that term, those are the frontline entry people. Those are the people that tend to be starting to do a lot of the input of budgets. Those are your department managers, your product line managers, your business unit managers, whatever the case may be, who are putting in all those numbers up front, right? And when it comes to them, we're going to help reduce the amount of effort it takes to get through a budgeting cycle, and we're going to reduce the amount of time that it takes to get through the budgeting cycle. And that's really important because in a lot of organizations, even though today you may be only doing a once a year kind of budget cycle, there is going to be more and more pressure on you over the course of time, you know, from your financial institutions, your board of directors, your lenders, and so forth, your regulatory agencies, to be providing things like quarterly reforecast or even monthly reforecast. That's where all these trendings are going. So it's going to be important to reduce the amount of effort and time it takes to get through a budgeting cycle. And that's one of the things that TrueSky helps you with. When it comes to the finance group within the organization, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of time it takes to administer a budgeting cycle. And thanks to a lot of the controls and configurations that you can do with TrueSky, we're going to help increase the quality of the numbers that you're getting back out of the system. And finally, when it comes to decision makers, instead of just giving them a spreadsheet full of numbers, we're actually going to help facilitate them making really good quality business decisions. We're going to provide them meaningful information that at the end of the day is going to help reduce your risk and avoid surprises. So those are the kind of 3 different user groups within your organization that TrueSky is going to be able to positively impact upon. Now, we kind of have 3 key pillars within TrueSky of how we wanted our application to work, what it was all about, and everything else. I'm going to talk about a couple of those. The first one of those is we wanted you to make sure that you could continue to leverage Excel as your end user interface for doing budgeting and forecasting. And why is that? Well, Excel has rapid user adoption. Odds are if you bring in someone to your organization that's going to be involved in some form of budgeting and forecasting, they have already used Excel. They know it, all right? So because of that, you're going to have minimal training when you start deploying TrueSky to your end users. Excel also has a huge depth and breadth of functionality. This is a product that's been out now for 30 plus years. And last number I heard, Microsoft had spent over $2 billion in R&D over that amount of time on that product. So it really cannot be matched by any other tool that's out there when it comes to crunching numbers. It's got a great ease of use. It's got a huge amount of flexibility, but what we've also added into it are a ton of enhancements that are all geared around doing budgeting and forecasting. The other thing that we wanted to do when we were working with TrueSky is we wanted to make sure that we could help empower members of the finance group. And how do we do that? Well, within TrueSky, we're just not a pretty interface in Excel. We're going to provide you with centralized data. So all of your budgeting and forecasting information no longer resides in dozens or hundreds of different independent spreadsheets. It's all centralized in one area where you can easily get at it for doing reporting and analytics. We're going to give you things that you don't have today in Excel, like audit trails. We're going to give you not only application level security, but also data level security so you can control your confidential information. We're going to take away that pain that goes along with merging all of those Excel spreadsheets into your final budget, and we're going to do it in real time. We're going to give you direct integration to multiple different data sources, so that could be, say, Sage 300, but it could also be any other electronic data source that you have data in that you might want to pull into TrueSky. So if you have scale systems, that are tracking the amount of tonnage that you're mining or so forth, we could potentially pull data from those or different systems within your organization. We're going to help promote accountability through a lot of the things that we do. And something I'm not going to go into heavily today, but thanks to our build once design, you are going to dramatically reduce the amount of time it takes to manage a budget cycle, all right? And then finally, we're going to help facilitate knowledge throughout your organization. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to allow you to easily involve more people into the budget cycle. So more people working on smaller pieces of the budget, but those are the pieces of the budget of the forecast that they know the best. They know that piece of the puzzle the best. So you're going to spread the workload, but you're going to get better quality number that's all going to roll up automatically. We're going to allow you to capture both qualitative and quantitative information. Okay, so not just the numbers, but the thought process behind the numbers. We're going to give you deep dive analysis, and we're going to help increase your accuracy. And at the end of the day, you're going to get decision level information, not just numbers back out of the system. So what are some of the things TrueSky can do? And then I'm going to launch into showing you some of the software. Well, up on the screen right now, you're going to see some of what we can do. This is not everything that we can do, but it's a lot of the common things. So when it comes to budgeting, planning, and forecasting, we're going to support both financial and operational type budgeting and forecasting. It might also include things like compensation planning, sales or revenue forecasting, obviously expenses, capital expenditures. I know a lot of you in the mining industry, you have heavy investments in CapEx. So again, we have tools to help facilitate that. Whether it be doing budgeting or forecasting on projects, whether it be on the cost or the revenue side, production planning, inventory planning, and so forth. And TrueSky can also be used for structured data capture if you need to get data into a system in a structured manner but don't have a solution for it. On the other side of the coin, we are also this reporting and dashboarding and analytical tool. So you can do any kind of consolidated type budget reports, presentation quality reports, including income statements, balance sheet, cash flows, full financials as well. Budget to actual type variance, if you're doing compensation, things like FTE and headcounts, and as well as dashboards and KPIs. So again, just trying to give you a flavor of some of what we do. This is by no means everything that we do. All right, so with that, I'm going to stop on the slides for a little bit, and I'm going to get out of PowerPoint, and I'm going to go into Excel. So right now, up on your screen, you should be seeing Excel. And as I talked about earlier, Excel is our end user interface for all interactions with TrueSky. So we've done that for a couple of reasons. As I talked about, Excel has a huge depth and breadth of functionality. Also, it's a tool that your people are already familiar with. And from an end user point of view, they only ever have to go into Excel to manage the budget and the forecast. So you don't have to do things like send them to a web browser and download that and have a separate application on their desktop that they've got to launch and then, move spreadsheets around and so forth. Only one place to go. So home, insert, page layout. These are all the traditional tabs that you see in TrueSky, in Excel, excuse me. And then where we come into play is in the TrueSky tab in the ribbon bar up here. Now, the first thing I want to point out is we support multiple languages. So I know a lot of your organizations are based in Canada, but you have operations, say, in South America. So TrueSky supports multiple languages. So as an example, I could choose to work in English as I am now. I could choose French. So if you have operations in, say, Quebec, or for South America, we also support Spanish as an example, okay? Not only do we convert the user interface and the language that they see, but also the fact that different areas and different regions do different displays for dollars and for the thousands separator and the decimal separator. So we handle all of that automatically within TrueSky as well. But really where I want to focus starts on this little button called the Hub. The Hub is a central area where an end user goes to see what they have to access within TrueSky. And I'm going to focus on two tabs. Assignments, those are input tasks. Those are things that I am required to do to get data from a manual basis into the system. This is how you're going to put budget and forecasting numbers into the system, okay? And as an example, under my annual budget cycle, you can see I've got to work on office expenses and travel expenses. And when it comes to reports, when it comes to financial statements, I've got 4 different financial statements available to me. These 4 financial statements and these 2 assignments are what I see when I log in to TrueSky. When another user logs into TrueSky, they may only see 1 input task and get no reports at all. Everything we do in TrueSky dynamically renders itself to the individual user based on their security settings and what you've published as an administrator. So you're not having to deal with that pain of emailing out dozens or hundreds of different Excel workbooks, or using a shared drive where you have to tell people, okay, that's your file, you use that one, and you use this one over here, and Mary, you use this one. Again, we handle all of that for you automatically, and end users only have to worry about what they see on the screen here. Now I'm going to focus on office expenses for a little bit. So start and end dates. So you're going to get a lot of command and control stuff out of TrueSky that you don't necessarily have with Excel by itself. So one of those is, like I said, start and end dates. You can set this up such that users cannot begin working on the budget until after the start date is passed. Now that's usually not a problem because people tend to procrastinate working on the budget. But more importantly, you can lock people out from making changes to the budget once a budget cycle is done. So if you've ever had that situation where you started to work on your presentation plan where you're going to go to your board or your financial institution, right? And you look at the numbers one day and then you go back the next day and the numbers have changed and you don't know why that is, you're not going to have to worry about that anymore because you're going to be able to have control over who can edit and when they are allowed to edit. So again, we're starting to add that control layer that you don't get today. Also, when it comes to this thing with the level here, within TrueSky, we have a complete workflow approval engine built into the application. And this allows you to route your numbers through various different levels of approval. So again, you can get more people involved in the budget cycle, have them all work on their little piece that they know the best, but all these numbers will roll up automatically and go through approval flows where you can track who gives sign off on numbers and when, rejections, adding commentary, and so forth with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my assignment for office expenses. And what the system is doing now is going out to the server and bringing me back a template and rendering it specifically for me and what I am allowed to see and to work with. Now, on the first tab are instructions, okay? These are, again, people are not budgeting every day, so you want to give them some kind of guidance, right? So what kind of increases are allowed? What's going on in your industry that you might want to make sure everyone knows about? So again, this is right up first and foremost what they see. But more importantly, it's going to be on this tab right here that I've called office expenses. Now, in this example here, I'm doing administrative type expense entry. But again, keep in mind, we do revenue, we do CapEx, we do compensation. I'm just showing you one example here. And then towards the end, I'm going to show you some more mining specific examples as well. So the first thing, down the side, these are my slicers, my dimensions, my filters. Different people refer to these differently, right? In my example here, I have a slicer for location. I have a slicer for department. I have a slicer for currency because we also support not just multiple languages from a UI point of view, we support budgeting in multiple different currencies. Again, that's probably important for some of you depending on where your operations are. And I have a slicer for version because we also support unlimited versioning of your budgets. Now, these are my slicers, my dimensions for this presentation. Your slicers are going to be completely up to you and will vary depending also on the business process that you're budgeting. So if you're forecasting compensation, you might have a slicer for employee. And so there's different things and it'll all vary depending on your setup. Now, if I did not want to work with my default location here, I could click my little edit button and up would be presented a list of all the locations that I have access to. Now, if we are tied in with your host data system like Sage, if you add a new location, a new department, a new customer, a new vendor, a new natural account, a new inventory item, whatever the case may be, TrueSky will pick it up automatically. So you don't have to manually maintain two different systems. Again, trying to take your workload down from administering, budgeting, and forecasting. Now, this list that you see here is also controlled by security. So if I didn't get access to the Seattle warehouse as an example, I wouldn't even see it on this list. We also give you some great ability to be interactive with your data. So as an example, I could pull back data from my Seattle office, but on the fly, I could say, you know what? I want to take data from my Washington operations, combine it with my Ottawa office, and combine it with my Berlin office. And now what it would do is in real time, it would either roll up those different locations into one number for me, or maybe it would lay those different locations side by side for comparison on a report for me. So again, allows you to have a lot of interactivity without having to do and build and maintain hundreds or of different reports in the system. So I'm going to go ahead and retrieve data from my Seattle office for the corporate department, and what it's doing is going out to the server and bringing me back data and preparing it specifically for me. All right. So now that we have the data back here, I'm going to close down my filter pane, and I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit, make it a little bit easier for you to see that are doing this over the web here, right? So first thing I point out, what you see on rows, what you see on columns, the color, the shading, the font control, completely up to you and how you want TrueSky to operate within your organization. We also even enforce security in the body of these documents. So as an example, if I didn't get access to the membership fees account, but the person sitting next to me did, I wouldn't see it on the list and they would see it. Now, in this layout, I have chosen to do 12 months of budget and show 12 months of actual and 12 months of variance, okay? What you show is going to be cleaned up to you. You could have multiple prior years of actual, multiple prior years of budget. You could be budgeting it out, 10 years at one point if you wanted to instead of just 12 months, okay? Again, all depends on how you like to do budgeting and forecasting. Now, I'm budgeting monthly, but we also support granularity of daily, weekly, quarterly, and yearly, okay? So, and that's going to be up to you, and that can vary by business process. So if you want to start doing weekly or daily forecasting on, tons mined, as an example, TrueSky can support that as well. I'm budgeting on a calendar year, January to December, but we also support fiscal years and user-definable years. So again, you could enter on a calendar, report on a fiscal, enter on a fiscal, report on a calendar. You're going to have all that kind of capabilities within TrueSky. Now, when it comes to an end user to start working with TrueSky, all I have to do is I can just start doing direct entry like I'm used to doing. I can do copy paste, I can do the drag and fill. And if you look at the formula that I'm typing in here, this is a true Excel formula, not Excel-like. I don't have to learn any kind of new kind of syntax or anything else. And the moment I hit save, my numbers are saved to the database where they are instantly available to any other user to access with security, obviously, in real time. There is no emailing of Excel workbooks, no document check-in, check-out, none of that kind of stuff that causes all the pain that goes along with using Excel today. But we're a lot more than just a Excel interface. We've added a lot of controls that you don't have necessarily. So as an example, if I go in here, if I try to change an actual, I'm going to be prevented from doing that. So we lock down things for you automatically where you don't want people making changes. But if I am a user that really loves their color scales, right, I can end up using that within TrueSky. So we probably kept alive about 99% of all of the Excel functionality that is out there, and only limited you in those areas that where it tends to break doing budgeting in a multi-user environment with Excel. But we've also taken it even further than that. And again, as I was talking earlier with the slides, we've added a lot of these things that come around command and control and giving you greater process, that greater control over the whole process. First one of those is audit trails. Anytime a user makes a change to a number in TrueSky, we track what was the change, what was the date and time, and who was the user that made that change, and what was the assignment that they made that change on. So if you've ever had that situation where you get people doing finger pointing saying, hey, I don't know how those numbers got in there, or things like, hey, I didn't put those numbers in there, you can't hold me to that, right? That all goes away with TrueSky. And if you have multiple people working on the same numbers, you're going to know exactly how those numbers built up and changed over the course of time. And if you like an older number better, you can actually copy that back into the system. So again, giving you that overview, that control capability we have today. We're also big believers in knowing what your people are thinking when they do the budget is probably actually more important than the actual numbers themselves, because knowing what they're thinking, knowing their assumptions, is really what gives you the ability to know whether these numbers are realistic or not, right? So we like to give you the ability to add a lot of commentary to your numbers. Now, unlike Excel, where the comments are embedded in the Excel workbook, and you can't get them out, and if you merge all your different workbooks into a master, you lose all that data. We allow you to add notes, but our notes are tagged and stored in the database, and they travel with the data. So these notes are available instantly to other users and even on other reports and input sheets. We tag it with who is the user, the date and time. I can add as many notes as I want, and again, different users can add different notes. You can even add electronic attachments. So if you have backup documentation in Word or a vendor quote in PDF, or a business, another spreadsheet that goes along with these numbers, you can actually attach it here. So all of your backup information is stored in one area. So when you're doing analysis later on, you don't have to go back to those shared drives and try to find a document that may have been deleted or was renamed or what have you. It's all about how we're trying to make budgeting and forecasting more collaborative and getting everyone on the same page, okay? Now, we've also added a whole series of what we call data tools. Now, the goal of these data tools is twofold. One, get your people in and out of the budgeting process quicker, but at the same time, give you better quality numbers. So as an example, I'm going to expand out to 12 months here, okay? Let's say I'm the kind of person that I just want to budget for the year and divide it by 12. Now, again, I don't like that functionality personally because I don't think it's realistic, especially if you're going to do cash flow forecasting later on. But if you want to do that, we can help you with that. So I'm going to type in 100,000, and from my drop down here, I'm choosing even, and now I hit replace. And you can see it automatically knew how many cells I selected and divided that number equally. And I could highlight another series of cells, and I'm just grabbing some cells randomly here. And now when I hit replace, you'll see that it knew how many I did and automatically did the math for me. But maybe you have some seasonality to your business. So again, certain mining operations, depending on where you are in the world, you may only be able to mine for certain parts of the year, right? You can't do it, throughout the whole, 12 months. So you can actually build some of those rules into TrueSky as well. So here I'm going to choose my summer trend. And now when I hit replace, you'll see it allocated more to the summer months and less to the winter months, okay? So you have that kind of capability. And maybe, what I want to do is I want to base this year's numbers on last year's numbers. So now I can do that, and it'll trend my numbers based on last year's actual. So we give you a lot of different ways to do trending that are going to give you better quality numbers at the end of the day, but without adding any additional amount of work. Now, I'm just going to do some bulk copy here of some numbers here really quick, okay? So the thing that we do is some big bulk manipulation. So if I say submit this to my boss comes back and says, Alan, you got to cut this by 23.5%. Instead of me going cell by cell by cell and make that change, I'm going to go up here and do 23.5%. And now every time I hit decrease, my numbers decrease by 23.5%. Or if I get the okay to go on a spending spree, I can type in 1,000 and put in value. And now every time I click increase, my numbers increase by 1,000. So again, that rapid manipulation without a lot of extra work. The other thing we can use this for is to solve for a goal. So let's say I'm budgeting for two different, departments, two different facilities, whatever the case may be. And I have the ability to move money back and forth. And I've spent a lot of time working on my trending for how my numbers are going to flow throughout the year, right? But I look down and I say, okay, 79,000. There's no way my boss is going to approve 79,000 for this, right? But I know I can get 60,000. Instead of me having to start all over again, I can come up here and type in 60,000. I can set this to budget and hit replace. And now what it did is it solved for that goal of 60,000, but it kept all of my ratios in alignment. So again, the use of these data tools, get your people in and out quicker, but improve the quality of the numbers at the same time. Now, up to this point, you've seen me just entering in dollars, but we also support what's called driver-based budgeting. And I'll show you some more of that later when I show you some mining stuff. But as an example right here, instead of budgeting the dollars, I could do something like budget headcount. Or again, this might be tons of tons mined. This might be number of vehicles, number of trucks that you need, any of those kind of things that go along with it, right? So you can see here, this is my budgeting for headcount, and I can type in things that are not just dollars. Even more, things like headcount, number of tons or whatever, they can drive other calculations. So if I come down here to kitchen and cleaning supplies, you're going to see I can't edit those directly, but as I change my headcount, my kitchen and cleaning supplies numbers change as well. So again, you can have numbers entered into one section automatically affect numbers in a different section. So again, your cost can, or a certain kind of one cost can drive another cost. One cost could drive protected revenue or vice versa, and so forth. So again, we support not just dollar entry, but also driver-based entry, and then those kind of complex calculations and formulas as well. Now, as I've been inputting, a lot of times you're pulling, especially if you're doing things like our GL level budgeting, right? There's a lot of backup that goes into it. So things like employee training. What goes into employee training? Like what classes am I thinking of budgeting for, right? Well, instead of having a separate spreadsheet that people have to go hunt and find and create and everything else. Why not add all that great detail in line? So when I do employee training, I can expand this and you can see I've already budgeted for these 2 classes for employee training. And now on the fly, I can add my next class right there. And I can put in what the amount is and this. And so now when I hit save, not only does it save the top line number here for me, it saves all of my detailed lines for me as well. So when I go to submit for approval, my boss can open up their form, look at these numbers, and instead of having to try to track me down and get me on the phone or an email and say, okay, what are you budgeting for employee? Right away, in real time, my boss can say, okay, Alan's budgeting for these classes, can, you know, reject my numbers, say, Alan, I think you're going a little heavy on the training, you need to cut back, right? Or more importantly, 6 months from now, on a budget to actual type report, you're trying to figure out why are you over or under budget on employee training, right? Without having to go back to your backup documentation, you're going to be able to just click here, open it up and say, oh, we budgeted for Mark to go to these 2 classes. Mark left the organization. That's why we are, you know, way under budget on employee training. So again, all about centralizing all of that information, better information with no additional amount of work. Now, as I've been inputting, I don't know if you've noticed that some of these icons on the side have gone from green to yellow to red, okay? That's our visual clue that this user is not meeting some form of data guidance that you've laid out for them during this budget cycle. So odds are you don't do true bottom-up budgeting, where you just let people budget whatever they want, and at the end of the day, that's the budget. Most organizations are setting down some ground rules, right? You've got to decrease cost in this category by this much. You can go upwards of this amount here. You know, you set down those big guidelines, and usually those guidelines go out in an email. And people pretty much open that email, they read the email, they close the email, they delete the email, and they ignore the email. And they submit whatever they want. And this is one of the reasons why the budget cycles drag on so long, is all that back and forth just trying to hit the target numbers that people are supposed to. So the solution with Entry Sky is you can build those kind of guidance rules into the budget process, and they can be very broad or very specific depending on the situation, as long as you can logically define them. In this example here, I'm comparing what I'm budgeting to spend this year against last year. If I'm a 0 to 10% increase, I'm getting a green. If I'm a 10 to 20% increase, I'm showing yellow. And if I'm over 20, I'm showing red. I click my little validate button here, and immediately I get feedback on what are wrong with my numbers, okay? So no longer I'm guessing. I know right away what's good or bad about my numbers. This can also be tied in with the approval process, such that if I have greens on the board, no problem. I can submit without an issue, and it goes right in. If I've got yellows, maybe I get a warning, but I can still submit for approval. But more importantly, if I've got reds, you can actually prevent people from submitting for approval, because odds are their numbers are so far out of whack, you're just going to reject them anyhow, and they're just wasting people's time. All right, so again, speeding up the process time, or making it go quicker, but also giving you greater control of your numbers. All right, so that shows you a lot of our general budget input features. So I want to kind of start transitioning into this analytics and reporting side of things. So one of the common things that happens during budgeting and forecasting, or even later on when your people are reviewing their reports, right? This example, how did I spend $1.25 million last year in my department? So what would I normally do? Well, I would probably either call or email somebody in the accounting or finance group, and they would have to stop what they're doing, go into the host system like Sage 300 or what other systems you have in play, run some kind of report, export that data out, maybe manually manipulate it a little bit, copy and paste it out of PDF or out of a CVS file, something like that, right? And then copy it into Excel and email it back to you. And there's a lot of problems with that. One, the turnaround time, right? It could take a couple days until accounting can get that to you. But also it's adding to the workload of the accounting and finance group. So why don't we just make it easier for your end user to do their own self-service? So I'm going to go up here and click on links and do payables and PO. And what it's doing is a real-time call back to a source data system. This could be Sage, or this could be any other electronic data system that we can get access to. And in this example, pulling me back all the AP and purchase order transactions that pertain to my department. Now, a couple things here. So, first of all, we've got security. So people are not getting into areas that they shouldn't get into here, right? Second of all, we've got logic. So I'm not bringing back every expense account, only the ones that apply to this situation. And I'm not bringing back like 10 years of data. In my example, I've filtered it for this year, but it could just be the month that I was on at the time. But now that I have this list, what can I do with it? Now, you can see I've got a lot of different columns, and I can move those columns around, and you're going to get to decide what columns are exposed to your individual people. And again, different columns, whether they might be looking at the revenue side of things or the GL side of things or the expense side of things, right? But as an end user, maybe I want to start sorting this stuff. I'm going to do my own analytics now. So I'm going to start at lowest to highest, or maybe I want to look highest to lowest. Okay, so that's still too many items, so I want to narrow it down. What was my top 10 purchases, and how much did my top 10 purchases come to? Oh, sorry, I clicked the wrong place. So what did my top 10 come to? Well, my top 10 came to, okay, about $25,000. Okay, that's one good view for me, and I'm going to clear that out. But maybe now I'm planning for next year. Now I want to say, okay, what do I traditionally do in the month of February? So right there, I can filter this back and I can see all the kind of things that I buy in a February, right? So I've got all these great capabilities to slice and dice this data for me. But maybe, again, still, it's going to help me look at it this way. So now I want to group it by account. So I'm spending money on company cars, company meetings. Again, being able to get my head around it better, right? And now you want to pull in vendor here as well. And now I can see, okay, supplies, software. What did I spend on software? I spent money with Adobe CAM soft. Well, there's mobile warehouse. Well, that's a tablet purchase that got bucked to the wrong GL account. Or that wasn't my department. That shouldn't go to my location, right? That wasn't me, right? So again, we're giving you all of your people, all the information they need at their fingertips to do their own analytics, to do their own ad hoc type reporting. And they can take any of this data that they've got here, and I'm just going to clear off my filters here. And once they've got it here, they can even dump it out to Excel to continue their own kind of reporting right here. And so this is going to come out, and it's going to send it out fully formatted and everything else. They can do whatever they want to do with it. So again, the goal of the analytics and the deep dive is to, one, give your people, if they want to do stuff like this at 3 a.m. on a Sunday, they've got the tools that they need, no excuses. But more importantly, we're going to offload a lot of that work that tends to fall on the shoulders of the accounting and finance group, make everyone more efficient. All right. So that kind of shows you input and our analytics. And there's even more on the analytics, but I have to be cognitive of time that we've got here. But TrueSky is also a complete reporting tool. Any data that we have in TrueSky, we can report upon. What I'm showing you here is a financial statement. But again, any data that we've got here, and much like what I was talking about before, this is all going to be able to be configured based on what you want to see, right? I'm showing 1 year of actuals and budget together. Let me do it that way. There you go, right? So I can combine actuals with our next budget to see kind of a projection of where we're going to end up. I can show multiple prior years of budgets, multiple prior years of variance, and I can even do things, calculations, like, what's our percentages are going. So you've got that ability to determine what level of detail you see. And even here, something like on this level, I can drill down to see our cost. I can go down here to expenses and see it by categories right here and so forth. And I can still continue to do those same kind of drill downs that I showed you earlier from a pure reporting environment. So again, with TrueSky, you get the capability to do budget and forecasting of any business process, that deep dive analytics, and reporting as you see fit. TrueSky can also be used as a dashboarding tool, okay? So up here on the screen, I'm gonna show you a financial dashboard. But again, like everything else, any kind of data we have in the system, you can do dashboards on. And these dashboards are not just static, pretty pictures. So as an example here, I'm just showing some big categories: revenue, compensation, expenses, and our net income. But these can also be what we call a what if type dashboard. So I can come in here and start playing with my numbers as well. So again, this is that bridging that gap between, into that deeper dive analytics and giving you information that you can use to make true business decisions, not just raw numbers. So I'm going to say, what happens if we could increase revenue by, we can't do it until August, but we could do it, I'll do a big jump up 100%. And what happens to our net income? We can see it there. But we know that we're going to have to increase Salaries, we can hold off until April, but that's going to be another big increase right there. But we can start cutting big time in February our expenses by 50%. Again, I'm just making up wild numbers here. And what does that end up doing to all of our numbers? So you can see right here in real time, you've got that ability to play with your different numbers to see how that's going to affect it. So as I keep going back to True Sky, budgeting and forecasting of any business process you can think about, deep dive analytics, reporting, and dashboarding. These are all the capabilities that are out of the box with True Sky, and you get to choose what you deploy. So if not all 4 make sense, great, use what you want, and you can choose which different users get access to what kind of functionality within your organization as well. So that kind of shows you some generic overviews. Now I'm going to show you a couple things just to give you an idea that we can handle things in the mining world. I myself personally am not an expert in mining. This is why you've got your partner Caron to help you out with all of this. But I'm going to show you some examples, and again, these are very straightforward, just to kind of illustrate a point. Let's talk about a couple different kinds of input. So I'm going to start here with getting things like statistical kind of budgeting. So I can actually put in things like, okay, how many tons do you think you're going to be able to mine in a day? And I'm just going to put some numbers in here, right? I'm just making up numbers right now, but you can see here, let's say I put 100 in for January, 100 in for February, and 100 in for March. But now you can see if that's, we're doing 100 tons per day. Again, making up numbers here. Now let me do 100 here. Sorry about that. All right. You can see how much we're expected per month is actually changing, even though it's per day, because we're giving the ability to put in that logic of, say, how many days in a month that your mine is active. So again, that can calculate that. And then again, you can put in something like a recovery rate here, like that. And again, I'm just making up numbers as we go through. But you can see here, you're able to put in all these different drivers to get to some of the reporting kind of things that you need back out of a solution. So again, any of these kind of statistical kind of captures you can do. Now we can also pull in actuals. So if you've got actuals in any electronic source, or people want to, worst case, type them in, we can pull them into True Sky automatically. That's the statistical side. Now there's also the ability to do, expenses. So again, you can put in numbers here for your different categories. And again, these might be some of your big categories that are going up here, right? But I think one of the things that comes into play, a lot of what we do here is we give you the ability to add all of that additional kind of detailed information. So let's say if it's engineering, I could go up here and I could add this kind of thing, right? Or environmental, let's do environmental. I can start adding all of these new lines. So this could be a, this could be the wetlands, something like that, right? So that's going to be that kind of capability. And we're going to add a new line of what we're going to have to do here, where it's going to be, and again, I'm blanking at different items, but again, right? So I've got these different things of what's going to cost in what different kind of month. Engineering, we're going to do a, right there. So not only do you get to put in your top line numbers, and again, this might tie back to your GL when it comes to doing financials, but now you can start capturing all these different sub items that what's going to go on with all of these different kinds of ideas. So again, you want to do this. This is going to be, new truck 1 or whatever, right? And I know the kind of trucks that you guys buy are not inexpensive. So capturing all of the statistics and expected kind of drivers that are along with your business, and some of these dollar type of things as well. And again, this can all be driver based. We need X number of employees, X number of trucks, and this is the average cost. You can do those kind of calculations as well. So again, we're giving you all of those kind of capabilities within True Sky to tailor this to your business and your needs. And again, you can have different categories depending on the type of facility that you're budgeting against, the type of reclamation you're doing, all of that kind of stuff as well. And then finally here, we are a reporting tool as well again, and I'm going to show you an example here. This is one kind of, again, a mock-up of, a kind of report that you could produce out of True Sky. If you wanted to, again, showing you things of, how many tons you went ahead and milled, what's your recovery thing, how many ounces did that end up producing? Again, All of these would be configured based on your particular business model and your particular metrics that you care about, right? But again, having these kind of capabilities where you have all this information, whether it be month to date, year to date, in a format that can be made presentation quality. So if you're going to put these in packages or you need to send this out to the board or your financial institutions or what have you. But again, also tying in those statisticals like I was showing you earlier, all right here within that TrueSky. And again, that capability to add those notes that I was talking about earlier, to be able to see audit trails, to be able to use those data tools, to be able to do drill downs, all of that same kind of capability that I've shown you all up to this point. Okay, so we have a solution that does budgeting and forecasting, that does analytics, that does reporting, that does dashboarding, that allows you to grab statistical units, driver-based budgeting, all of the kind of reporting that can be tailored specifically to your industry and to your company. All of that is capable within TrueSky. So that kind of gives you an overview of the software. Now, again, there's a lot more we do, but that should give you a good flavor for it. So again, to reiterate, any kind of budgeting, planning, and forecasting model that you want to deploy and to work with, and pretty much any kind of report if we've got the data. Okay, again, these are just some examples that we have up on screen, but I wanted to give you all of that. So that kind of is where I'm going to end off here. I want to make sure we've got some time for Q&A. If you have any questions about TrueSky, if you'd like to learn more about TrueSky, please reach out to Caron.
Thank you, Alan. That was really excellent. I appreciate that, how you covered that. One of the issues for a lot of mining clients is moving to the cloud. One of our clients on the call today is looking at centralizing things and having one central source that everyone connects to. How, can TrueSky be deployed in the cloud? What's the positioning for that?
Yeah, so TrueSky can be deployed what we call on-premise. So, that could be a data center that you control, or that server back in your closet in the back room kind of thing. We also have an offering called TrueSky Online, so TrueSky in the cloud. Unlike a lot of other vendors, you don't give up anything by going to the cloud with TrueSky. So you can have a budgeting and forecasting solution that's in the cloud. We can tie into your data sources, whether they be on-premise or other cloud data sources. So if let's say you've got Sage 300, but it's on-premise or whatever, we can still tie into that data. We have ways to do that. But then you can have TrueSky in the cloud. And that way, as long as your people can make an internet connection, they can access, whether it be reports or doing budgeting and forecasting with TrueSky. So we definitely support that concept. And again, one of our standard offerings.
Great. Specifically for Sage 300, can you talk a little bit more about the integration to Sage 300?
Yeah, so TrueSky allows us to use Sage 300 as a data source. And even though you are using Sage 300, you may have other electronic sources that you want to tie into along with Sage 300, which is fine. So it doesn't just have to be Sage 300. So if you've got multiple data sources in your organization, including along with Sage 300, because you probably do, we can pull from those as well. But when we integrate with Sage 300, we can do a lot of different things and different data that we pull in, depending on what you need, right? The most common thing we pull in at the start are, I'll call master records and actual. So master records are things like your GL accounts, or your customers, or your vendors, or your inventory items, okay? It's that master list of all things that you might be budgeting and forecasting against, including things like price list or whatever else the case may be, okay? And again, the way that integration works is if that is your system of record, that's your master system. You enter them into Sage 300, we pick them up automatically, so you don't have to manually maintain two different systems. We also can pull in actuals, okay? So if we're talking GL type budgeting, obviously those would be your GL balances and your GL actuals that we're pulling in. But if you're getting down to things like vendor forecasting or customer forecasting or inventory or whatever, it can also be actuals that come from a subledger as well. Again, you're not having to manually maintain those systems, and you can determine how often you want TrueSky to be updated from your central data source. Okay, so again, up-to-date information, you're not having to do any kind of cut and paste export it out, re-import it back into TrueSky. We're going to handle all of that for you automatically. Again, it's one of those things that takes away a lot of that extra workload, and is what's going to help you be able to start doing budgeting and forecasting on, say, a quarterly or even a monthly basis, because all of those things are going to come in automatically. Your budget templates are going to cycle forward for another quarter or for another month automatically without you having to worry about it each and every time. So again, you can do more budgeting and forecasting because we're taking all that workload off of you.
Perfect. One of the things that is really, we're always faced with when we convert clients from other systems to a Sage solution is history. And so, given the fact that you can link to different data sources, we can leave the detailed data in the old solution, bring balances forward, and then use TrueSky to report on old on the old system and new on the new system. So
correct. And one more question, because it tends to come up when we talk about this. If you so choose, the budget numbers in TrueSky can be pushed back in to Sage 300. Now, the only thing that we have to keep in mind is we can do far more complex budgeting and forecasting than the Sage 300 budget table support. But let's say you've got a whole series of reports that you're already using in a reporting tool, and you want that budget number back into Sage 300, we completely support that. Also, if you're using a tool like SCI, Sage Enterprise Intelligence, we can become a direct data source for that tool as well. So again, you've got a lot of flexibility with TrueSky and getting your numbers back out without having to kill yourself.
excellent. In terms of the licensing module and how the software is sold, can you just talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so we've tried to make it really easy for you to purchase TrueSky, and you don't need a PhD or a phone book as a price list for figuring out what you need out of TrueSky. So when it comes to deployment, we don't care at all how many different budget models. We don't care how many different data sources you have. We don't care what kind of budgeting you're doing. None of that matters. How many different input sheets you create. Those are all the things that make it difficult to understand what your costs are going to be, right? We only license by number of users. It makes it very easy. We've got 3 different user types that your users fall into. At the lowest level, we have a reporting only user. This is someone that just consumes data. So they would be running a financial statement. They'd be seeing a budget to actual report. They're not doing any kind of input. They're not part of an approval process. They're just a consumer of data, okay? So that's the lowest level of licensing. And again, you'll have some people in the organization that just consume data. A step up from that, we have a user license that are people that, like the license before, they run reports, they can consume data, but they're also involved in an approval flow for a budget or a forecast. This might be most commonly executives who they're not going to do data input, but they have to give yes or no's or thumbs up or thumbs down on the numbers, right? So they're going to look at the numbers, they're going to approve them, but they're not going to ever do input, okay? So you figure out how many of those people you need. Then we have a third user type, which is a full user, okay? That is somebody that can consume data, they can run reports. That is somebody that can be part of the approval process and somebody that can do data input, okay? So all you really have to do is break it down to who falls into that bucket. It makes it easier for you to get your heads around, makes it easier long-term to plan how your growth might be. And again, if you need to, you can move people around from different licenses. You can upgrade licenses and so forth. Won't bore you with all of that, but that's really how we tend to license. There are things like quantity discounts and all that kind of stuff, depending on user counts and so forth. But I hope that answers the question. But again, that should give you some idea. Again, we've tried to make it easy on you to understand what you're going to need from a licensing point of view.
Perfect. No further questions, but I want to thank you very much for taking the time and thank all of you for attending. We're going to be taking a break on our mining user group meetings for the summer, and then we'll start again in the fall. And with any luck at all, we're going to have some in-person sessions in Vancouver anyways, and possibly also in Toronto if we can arrange that. So thank you very much.